Welcome to Beyond Belief, Tales of Religious Exodus, where we delve into the personal journeys of people who've left fundamentalist religions. In this series, we explore their experiences within religion, their journey out, and how they found meaning and healing on the other side.
In this episode of Beyond Belief, we deviate from the usual format of interviewing people who have left fundamentalist religion themselves, and instead have a conversation with psychiatrist Dr. Mark Banschick. Dr. Banschick is a psychiatrist with deep expertise in narcissism, child development, integrative medicine, and the intersection of psychology and spirituality. His blog on Psychology Today has reached nearly 18 million readers, and he's been featured in major media outlets including the New York Times, Huffington Post, and Politico. Dr. Banschick has also taught clergy about the interface of psychology and spirituality and is a prolific writer on the topics of narcissism, child development, and spirituality. This episode is a more theoretical exploration of the themes that can be found across multiple movements, but towards the end of the episode, Dr. Banschick does share a poem that alludes to his own experiences with one of these organizations. In this episode of Beyond Belief, we deviate from the usual format of interviewing people who have left fundamentalist religions themselves and instead have a conversation with psychiatrist Dr. Mark Banschick. In this episode of Beyond Belief, we deviate from the usual format of interviewing people who have left fundamentalist religions themselves, and instead we have a conversation with psychiatrist Dr. Mark Banschick. Dr. Banschick is a psychiatrist with deep expertise in narcissism, child development, integrative medicine, and the intersection of psychology and spirituality. His blog on Psychology Today has reached nearly 18 million readers, and he's been featured in major media outlets including the New York Times, Huffington Post, and Politico. Dr. Banschick has also taught clergy about the interface of psychology and spirituality, and is a prolific writer on the topic of narcissism, child development, and spirituality. This episode is a more theoretical exploration of the themes that can be found across multiple movements, but towards the end of the episode, Dr. Banschick does share a poem that alludes to his own experiences with one of these organizations. All right, Dr. Banschick, thank you so much for joining me on Beyond Belief, and I welcome your...
I am beyond belief that I'm here.
Exactly. So I wanted to start out, the way I usually start, this is a departure from the usual format where people just talk about their own journeys and they're the experts of their own lives. Here, you're coming in a bit as an expert, at least to some degree, on the broader experience of things. But I would love to still start, to the degree that you feel comfortable, with some of your own potential overlaps. And you can get as detailed or broad as you would like around your own experiences with some of these high control groups.
Well, I don't, when you talk about high control groups, you're talking about enmeshed situations where there's an asymmetry between leadership and everybody else. Okay? From my point of view, those are narcissistic systems. You have a person or group that is in charge, that believes that they know what's right. Many times they believe they are intermediaries between you and higher sources. And you, by proxy, I don't know if the audience will understand that, but by identifying with the leader, you in turn become big and special yourself. You're not big and special by yourself. You're big and special by identifying with the leader. And that, Shalom, is the trap. Because you come into these groups looking to grow and become a bigger person. But you soon enter the group feeling I'm only big as long as the leader's smiling at me and happy with me. And underneath, there's a lot of anxiety about, am I going to be okay? I got to make sure he's happy. And a lot of hiding under the carpet what might be going on that's not right, because we can't have the leader upset. Now, these systems, narcissistic systems, can be religious, they can be woke, they can be political, they can be communist, they could be a corporation, they could be your family. And that's really where it starts. It starts usually that we grow up in enmeshed families where we don't have a good boundary between ourselves and our parents. And our parents' anxiety or their need to control makes us feel we have to comply. And when that happens, and I'm talking about the people now that are vulnerable to entering cults and entering high control situations, we don't just willy-nilly walk in and go, oh, why don't you just control me? I just want to be controlled. We're trying to solve something. We're honorable people who are injured as children who are trying to solve something. We normally come from a family that's enmeshed. You have a very narcissistic father or mother, or a borderline mother or father, or a controlling or rageaholic mother or father, or an alcoholic or chemical dependent alcoholic, and everybody's got a total line. If they don't toe the line, they're in trouble, they're hit, they're diminished, they're out. Now, have you ever met a family like that, Shalom?
Once or twice. Can you explain to me the leap from, okay, you're coming from that sort of enmeshed situation. What is it about the narcissistic system that you encounter as an adult that seems, at least on paper, to be a solution to what you're dealing with?
What I want everyone to be aware of is that if you want to discuss cults or control situations, you have to understand enmeshment and the family of origin. It's really the same thing, but it's the wish to somehow overcome. Now, Freud, whether you like him or not, had something called a repetition compulsion. And he said that when something bad happens to you, you very often engage in the same bad thing later on in life in the hopeless hope that this time it'll be okay. So that's one reason why people do it, because you go to something familiar that this time you feel it's going to be okay. And the promise here is it's not your father, it's not your mother, it's not your older brother or sister that abused you. It's a complete new person. It's a guru, it's a rabbi, it's a priest, it's a corporate leader, it's a woke avatar. It's like somebody who is now telling you, hey, let's start anew. I'm the real deal. I'm not going to hurt you. And you lack the filter to see, here we go again. So you really go in, it's familiar, and yet there's promise. And the promise is I'm going to have my same family with similar power where I'm asymmetrical, but this time they'll love me. What's that a recipe for, Shalom?
More of the same.
And what's that like internally when that happens?
I mean, I've watched people, really lose themselves. Some of the descriptions that I've heard, people use language like, I was asleep for 30 years, or I was dissociated. Right? Yeah.
So we use many defenses not to deal with the truth. We dissociate, we use denial, we use wishful thinking, we use repression. Some of us get sick, we use repression. We just get headaches and stomach aches. You are not loved for you. You're loved for how you perform for the person, for the leader. And that's a recapitulation of what just happened when you were young and incredibly painful. And to look at that objectively, that I did this twice, right? It's very hard. But we have to love people. It's okay. You're just a person. We do stupid things. We all do stupid things. I do stupid things. Come on, we all do. And it's like, okay, breathe deep. You did it twice because you wanted to make it right this time, but it didn't work out. He doesn't really have your best interests at heart. He wants to have your best interests at heart, but he doesn't even know what his best interests are because he's so wrapped up with being so important. So I think that helps you understand. I think people go in order to go to something familiar and hoping this time it'll be different. I think people go in because they're hoping to go in and charge and make it different. They go in feeling like they belong in this place, and they don't even know what it is to be in something that's normal. They don't know what it is to be in a relationship where there's mutuality, where people just respect each other. Because asymmetry is the only thing they know.
Thank you. And so let's dive in a little bit more into the one side of that role. We've been almost understanding the the recipient of that narcissistic system. Of course, it doesn't work without the other side, which is the narcissist. And the topic, the title gets thrown around a lot, right? And everybody on TikTok is a narcissist or in a relationship or spotting
I
one,
know.
right? But if we going to this type of narcissist that has an outsized role, they're not just going from relationship to relationship, but they actually do create some sort of movement,
Right.
as you said, religious, corporate, political.
Yes.
What
I'm getting it.
is that narcissist? What is going on
So
with them?
there are a number of different kinds of narcissists, and as you know, I'm writing a book on the subject. It's quite an experience. And there's the overt narcissist that you all know. There's the introverted covert narcissist. But there's a malignant narcissist, but there's a kind of narcissist that I discovered while looking at religious life called the communal or religious narcissist. It is so fascinating because most narcissists, they're too special for their own good. They are more special than everybody else, right? They're so pretty, they're so smart, they're so witty, or they're so aggressive, or they're so, they never lose, they never apologize. And you know a narcissist, okay? So how can you have a religious narcissist? Because religious people, they believe in humility. Now that's the interesting thing. The need to be special gets transformed culturally from look how great I am, I'm smart, pretty, or rich, to look how holy I am. Look how committed I am. Look at my family lineage. Before you know it, you're just as special and ridiculous and asymmetrical and mean-spirited as anybody who's secular and a narcissist. Is that incredible?
You're using different social cues or social indicators that are important in your society, like your lineage, which in the Western world might not matter.
Doesn't matter.
But here you say this is something that is valued. Or let me explain to you why it's valued, because in the Baal Tshuva movement, for example, you have to first explain to people how lineage is important, and then that you have it. Right? It's 2 steps.
But the point is, when you have it, you are more special than everybody else. And that is ridiculously unreligious. That's irreligious. That has nothing to do with spirituality. That has everything to do with the kind of mafiosa, kind of clubbiness that narcissists create, whether it's in a small family, whether it's in a corporate situation, whether it's religion. And what fools people so much is that you can have a narcissist who's very humble, but very controlling. And if you cross them, they will crush you. I wouldn't be surprised if Osama bin Laden had some of these elements to him, like some humility and real commitment. But then if you crossed him, 9/11 happens. Now that's a very dramatic situation. I'm sure he had other diagnoses and other issues. I don't want to go into that too deeply. But you can see how somebody who might be humble in one setting could be very dangerous if you cross them ideologically. And I think that's true that gives you a sense of how dangerous it could be to be with a narcissistic leader who really doesn't care about you. They care about you complying with what they want you to do.
Right. The cause takes precedent over any one person. Every means justifies the end. And I'm curious how that fits in with all of this. The classic, if you cross me, it's not me. Who am I? I'm just a guy. But this cause is God's word, so I must smite you, basically.
Right. So,
where does the idealized cause fit?
So if you look at some of the aspects of narcissism, here are some of the. Narcissism is a basket of traits, some of which are perfectly healthy, but when they become too intense, they become sick. So grandiosity, entitlement, a sense of aspirational hope, brittle self-esteem, kind of a Machiavellian ability to use people as you need to, a certain lack of empathy. Now, any one of these things by itself, having an aspiration, like you have aspirations to be a successful hypnotherapist, that doesn't mean that your sense of aspiration is narcissistic. But if you have an aspiration to be the leader of some kind of cult that's going to just take over or has all the answers, or you're part of an organization that's going to crush everybody and you're in charge of it, Now, that's an aspiration that's no longer a human being just wanting to be successful. Entitlement's the same thing. I would hope, Shalom, that when you go, go someplace and you need something, you are entitled sufficiently to ask for it. You give your services to somebody. You're entitled to ask to get paid. It's okay. But if you feel entitled that the person should be coming back to you regularly for the next 30 years so that they pay you and take care of you for you because you're so special, that's no longer entitlement. That's narcissistic entitlement. So I think to get back to your question about leaders, whether it's Torah or the Quran or Buddhist, there's a lot of, it's funny because the Buddhist tradition there's a lot of, shenanigans that's gone on there too. All these religious movements have a risk for people to be so self-serving while at the same time be blind to just how self-serving they are. They think they're doing it for God, but they haven't done the work to see to what degree they're doing it for themselves. And I look at frankly, if you look at the nepotism, like, are they giving jobs to their kids? Are they living better than other people? Do they need a lot of praise? If somebody crosses them, do they cut them off or do they engage them? These are the signs about whether somebody is a more normal, healthy person or someone's more narcissistic and running the show because they need to run it their way. Otherwise, you're crushed or you identify with them and therefore become weak. Will your audience understand when we're discussing about identification by proxy? Because this is important. A real religious person would want another, like, you're raising children. You don't want your kids to feel good only because you love them. You want them to feel good, to be the best version of themselves. And if that means they get into an argument with you because they disagree with you, you should be applauding in a certain way. Because that means you raise kids who can think for themselves. Would you agree?
I would, yeah.
And this, I think, is what a good religious leader can do. And if a religious leader raises you or teaches you in such a way that you will only be appreciated if you agree with them, then they're just making you weaker. They're making you stronger. In fact, I really do have an issue with the idea of kind of nullifying yourself before some kind of leader, because that leader, if they haven't done huge work on themselves, it gives them too much power, and I don't think that kind of power is useful to anybody.
Yeah, that's a lot of things come to mind from what you just said. I mean, just going back a bit further, the grandiosity thing, like what I'm hearing is basically you're not grandiose enough on your own as the leader. You take this concept of God, which is so much grander than
Yes.
you become a conduit to God, and now all of God's grandiosity gets to shine through you. So that magnifies more than most people.
And isn't that kind of selfish? Isn't that kind of selfish? Like, I'm the one who gets to be the conduit to God, to you. Where's the humility there?
Exactly. Yeah.
What's that?
What came up for me around that is the entire Hasidic movement, and this goes back all the way to the 1750s, and I'm sure you've studied it to a degree. And at the time, it was supposedly a redemptive arc because the Lithuanian Jews all believed that you just had to be extremely academic to get there, and the rabbis introduced a shortcut: stick with me, and I'll bring God in through the back door. But still, and to this day, Hasidim just devote themselves completely to the rabbi as the conduit, right? And it's entirely nepotistic, right? It's passed on from father to son as if there's some sort of, something in that bloodline that is more connected. It's absurd.
Yes. Now, I'm not an expert on Hasidut, and I'm sure that there are wonderful Hasidic leaders, but I would imagine that when the Baal Shem Tov started this as a way to differentiate from a very oppressive Lithuanian Jewry that took poor people and made them feel like crap. Made them feel like crap because they didn't have the access. They weren't good enough, ever good enough. Talk about an asymmetrical system. I bet you the Baal Shem Tov in his heart said, this is a liberation for everybody. Yes, I have an inspiration, but ultimately it's not about me. It's about God is available to everybody, to every man. And it's in the feeling and connection and dance, not just in the learning. And we're not going to go as through the conduit called the Lithuanian rabbinic system, the yeshiva system. We're going to do it differently. We're going to make it immediately accessible to you. Now, I'm not an expert, but I wouldn't be surprised that over the centuries, that then kind of deforms into a certain kind of club where the guys in charge run the show and everybody else still has a lot of the good energy, but the good energy is through the leader. And I think at some point that's counterproductive because we want people to be close to God on their own.
Yeah. And what's coming up for me now, very interesting as we're talking, is I think we oftentimes think of cult as like a top-down thing where the cult leader gathers together the band of people who follow him. But could there be almost this phenomenon, or maybe there always is in the system, as you described it, of the bottom up, where you need the followers to make you a cult leader? And what is it about their personalities that they're almost like pushing you upwards? Like they don't want you to remain amidst them, because that's no fun at all, because you're not the godlike figure that they want. They need to push you upwards.
It's funny. I have many friends who are Chabad shaliachs, and I oftentimes feel that they have it good because they get all these people that are not part of the Orthodox world kind of influencing them. And they get to be Orthodox, but they get to live in both worlds. And I think there's something very vibrant about that for them. I think it really works for them as individuals, these shaliachs. They get to be religious with their families, and yet they get to be with people who aren't religious. And so I think the bottom up teaches them, and the top down teaches, they learn from the bottom up and they teach from the top down. And I think it actually is a kind of cool model. I don't know if it's something that Schneerson, thought about, but I think that many of these non-religious people that interact with Chabad shaliachs actually like turn them on to ideas that are useful and can make them even more vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
but I don't want to critique the Hasidic system. That's not my place in this world. God willing, it should work for everybody. I would just hope that everybody who is a Hasidic leader looks at Torah and uses it to work on their midot, to work on themselves, to make sure that their ego, their family, their financial well-being is not linked into how the Hasids do, that they should be really motivated to elevate their people rather than elevate their small little clan. That would be my prayer and my hope for them.
Yeah, you talk about being careful of charisma, and you're alluding to that right now, and I'm curious what that means or what to look out for, right? So some people find themselves more in positions of leadership, and what is it that you could almost look as your own like canary in the coal mine of your own soul to spot, am I going south? Because I think being afraid of it to begin with is a great start, right? I tell people, if the thing you're afraid of won't come true, it's all the other stuff that comes in from like the back door. But what's your take on that? Like how can you actually be careful of
Well, I think this gets back to narcissism, because there are many ways that people become narcissists. Some people are traumatized and they want to be asymmetrical because that's the solution to the trauma. I will never, ever have that happen to me again. And no one's going to ever push me around. I'm the winner. Forget it, okay? There's some genetic aspects to narcissism. Probably entitlement and grandiosity has some genetic qualities to it. I mean, that doesn't mean people are going to be narcissistic. It means parents have to deal with an entitled kid and help them kind of calm down. But things like charisma, beauty, intelligence, talent, being born into a fancy family. This is another way to become narcissistic. If you are, I don't want to pick on Bill Clinton, for instance. Maybe many of your listeners don't even remember who he is. It's so long ago. But he was a very charismatic president. So was Obama. And so was Trump. And so many people who are successful have charisma. So many people who are successful are good looking or incredibly engaging. Let me talk about looks for a second, and then we'll go back to charisma. Imagine you meet an incredibly good-looking woman, or incredibly good-looking. I mean, just so stunning you can't stand it. Okay? Now, they did nothing wrong. They're perfectly, it's perfectly fine. They're allowed to be beautiful, right? Yeah. The tendency is if they screw up in some way, they're late 5 minutes for an appointment, you give them a bye. You don't want to. Why are you shaking your head?
Because the it reminds me of like the Malcolm Gladwell of like, if you're taller, you're more successful in life.
Yeah. So you give them a bye, right? And then they say something. They make a gossipy, stupid comment. You give them a bye again, and again, and again, and again, and again. All their lives they get byes. You come. Look. I don't want to pick on the Kennedy family. They should live and be well. Come in a famous family. People give you byes. They're happy to have you as a friend. They don't. It's just what happens. You're worth a lot of money. You get a bye. What happens to your character if you get a bye all the time since you're young? I'm asking you.
Meaning you don't get shaved down by reality, and to your spiky bits, your sharp edges don't get smoothed out. You just get to go through life as some sort of tumbleweed. I was the Israeli analogy of that all Israelis are sabras, which is like prickly pears, right? I was like, I don't want to be a prickly pear. That's like a horrible analogy, right? I don't need you to be prickly on the outside and sweet on the inside. Could you be sweet on the outside too, for God's sake, right? So that's just one.
Well, I think people that have been given a bye again and again and again. Think about rich people, pretty people, handsome people. People come from famous families, or it's what happens is they don't learn reciprocity in relationships. They don't get humbled by life to become real mensches, to become real people. And that is another way that narcissism happens. Once again, I have no idea who Tom Cruise is. I have no idea who Penelope. I don't know any of these actors and who they are and how wonderful or not wonderful they are. I don't know. But if you are very successful, it's likely that you're surrounded by sycophants, and it's likely you're at risk of not developing the proper kind of way to be with other people that is humble and has reciprocity and is mutual. And that's the way many narcissists also develop. So when you're talking about charisma, getting back to your original question, you know where I'm going now. There are people born with charisma. And charismatic people get byes. They just give you that big smile, and they go, and I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'll get you next. I'll help you next time. So I think that when you have charisma, you have a power in the world that you're not even aware of, that you can move the world with your energy, and you have to be careful that you'll develop into a person that exploits other people without even knowing it. I experienced that to some degree when I dealt with religious people who I thought went over the edge and were not loving to me, but more loving to who they wanted to be. And I think that's the risk, that you have too much charisma and you end up exploiting people, and then you get people stuck in your web. So charisma is a problem. Yes. How do you self-monitor that?
Yeah. What comes to mind when you based on what you described it, what I would suggest very broadly, as almost like as a theory, is you got to find your edge. You got to find the people who call you out, and they may be harder to find if you have charisma, right? All your immediate surroundings might be the yaysayers, basically. And then go find a place where you do encounter your edge.
Well, I think you have to also be a person that wants to grow. You have to be a person that wants to be a good person. There has to be a story going on in you that's parallel to whatever's going on. Yes, I am charismatic. Yes, I am wealthy. I have those. I want to be a better person than that. And if you have your peers that can call you out, a therapist, peers, a good spouse, you're on your way.
You know what I find scary? I find scary that I came from basically I describe as a personal growth cult. Every second word coming out of their mouth pretended to be related to personal growth, right? And they sunk further than a lot of other people with that as their guise. And I think that's a particularly scary one when it's, if somebody comes to you and it's just, I'm going to make you a lot of money, I'm going to give you more power. Great, you call it what it is. But when it's packaged under, I'm going to make you a better person, which a lot of religion does.
It does.
And the one that I think is where it's extra dangerous, because they do all the talking. They do all the talking of the talk. And then assessing whether there is personal growth happening here can be very difficult for an outsider, for a layperson to even spot.
I think that's true. And then you get entangled with them and you can't get yourself out. So that's the other side of the charismatic cultist situation, where you feel you can't get out. And so they'll ask you to cut yourself off from your friends. They'll ask you to cut yourself off from your family. They'll tell you this, it's all trait, that things that you shouldn't be reading that are going to get you into trouble. And you're in trouble when whoever it is you're entwined with, the narcissist or the controlling person you're aligned with, that person, if they start cutting you off from other healthy sources of support, really consider running, because that's dangerous. That's a sign that you're in trouble.
Yeah. I've seen it done more subtly. I've seen it done, and this is, again, like a really smart tactic where they say, no, don't cut off your parents completely. It's very important. In fact, you could be an influence on them, a positive influence. But why don't you move to a more religious neighborhood? Okay. And why don't you stop eating at their house for Shabbat? But by all means, have them go have a coffee with them once a week. Right? So it's almost more subtle than like, hey,
it's very sneaky, because it's a co-opting of your need for your parents and healthy people, while at the same time drawing you in and getting you more dependent on their group that's going to reinforce your self-esteem. I think.
Yeah. So I
think that's really interesting. I think these are all tactics, and I don't think anyone's sitting there with a board and saying, what are the tactics we're going to use to ensnare this person? I think if these things just develop over time, it's like, trial and error. We have parents in America. We got to deal with parents in America. We can't just reject them because we're going to look like absolute crazies, okay? But we do have to keep them from the parents, because the parents are going to pull them, and then we're in trouble. Plus, wouldn't it be nice to get the parents to give a nice donation? You do this really well.
Exactly. I often think of these systems. I always think of the evolutionary survival of it, right? Maybe there was 10 organizations that were founded. Some were too hardline. Some were too liberal. They both disappeared. And the ones that last are the ones that maybe accidentally landed on the right formula.
Worked hard on the right formula. And let's also acknowledge there's something human here. The wish for truth, dealing with the emptiness sometimes of life. So many young people, the period of time between 18 and 28 is so fraught. Look, I'm much older than you. I've seen so many people of so many different age groups. I can tell you, I'd say 18 to 28 is a tough age. It's a beautiful age, for many reasons, but developmentally it's tough. And let me explain to you why. I think, particularly now, in contemporary America, I don't know what's like in Israel. Birth and death, those are the toughest transitions. Let's put that out, okay? Put it out there. Can we agree? Birth and death, those are tough, right? Next after that, getting on the bus to go to kindergarten? I don't think so. That's hard. No, it's hard. It's hard. Remember, it's hard. You get on the bus, you don't want to go, you want to stay with mom, but after 3 days, you're on the bus. It's not a problem. Right?
For the record, I cried every day to kindergarten for a year, so let the record show that.
Let's do some more. Getting married. Hard transition. I'd say hard. Getting divorced.
Way harder.
Very hard transition. Very hard transition. Having a child. Hard transition. But usually rewarding, so it mitigates. Usually rewarding. Launching from college, it's tough, because you've had the same cohort all your life. You grew up, you smile, you understand. Everyone understands. You grew up with the same boys and girls since you were little. And even go to college, there's a whole new cohort. You leave college, you're on your own for the first time.
And it's the first time where no one's telling you exactly what you need to do to pass, whatever passing means.
And the adult world calls, and it is cold. The adult world called, and adulthood calls, and it's cold. And it's scary, and you have to lean into it, and you don't feel you have what it takes. And you go sideways, and you have crazy relationships. You go sideways, and you have drug problems, right? You go sideways, you just get pissed off at your parents all the time. But they're not the problem. The problem is that adulthood is calling. It's calling. And time is not your friend. For the first time, time is not your friend. I really think it's hard. How do I know? Do I want to be a doctor? Do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to, do I want to be an artist? Do I want to be, what kind of man or woman do I want to date? What do I want to do? It's so many options, and yet so little guidance. And I think so many people, when they leave college, there's a kind of anxiety that's in the system that's real, and they want answers. Where am I going with this, Shalom?
You're going to the fact that every religion knows that one of the best places to recruit people is in the college campuses. And I used to think it was uniquely Orthodox Jewish, but there's Muslim chaplains, there's Christian chaplains. They're all trying to get their claws on the vulnerable souls that are figuring life out.
Because there's something gratifying about being told this is the way to go. We want, unconsciously, the audience will not like this. Or unconsciously, we want our daddy. Unconsciously, we want, and they provide it. And it's not always.
For sure. I actually believe that this is what the mechanism in hypnosis that works. And again, you have to be careful with hypnosis, but it can work really well. Because in hypnosis, part of us would like to just shut our mind down and just follow instructions. And it's a very young part, actually, that really takes to that. I've never seen it talked about this way, but that's kind of my theory, that what I've seen. And that is kind of the mechanism with which hypnosis works. And as we know, it can work quite well in a lot of situations.
We can discuss that very quite a lot. I'll make one comment on it, and then we'll move on. There are many memories that we have that are pre-verbal. I mean, how early is your earliest memory?
I think I remember being like 1.5. Or,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I was still in the crib.
Most people would say 3 to 4. But unconsciously, we all have inside our body sensibility, sucking at the breast, looking at our mother in their eyes. The utter feeling of being taken care of. That everything's okay. And we're okay. It's in us. We don't remember it, but we know it. And even if it's a bottle, it doesn't matter. The eye-to-eye contact, 18 inches, the eyes are set at 18 inches at birth. Right locked into mom. Look at any mother breastfeeding a child and you'll see it. The contentment for both of them. For both of them. And I believe that when we do this body work, or this shamanistic work, or this hypnotic work, or this meditation work, we go into these pre-verbal memories that just come to the surface, and we are in a different place, and we're open for some kind of neuroplasticity from that place.
I like that. That's a good layer to add on top.
Do you understand?
I do.
So I think that let's get past the mommy, go back to the daddy. People don't like it because we're not in a daddy culture right now. People are so angry at men. But the need to be told what to do, that everything's going to be okay, it's very, very powerful. And when you feel gratified by it, whatever words they use, they can be as fancy as they want to be. They can be as enabling as they want to be. In the end of the day, somebody knows and you don't. They're telling you, you feel good because...
Actually, this is a question that's jumping into my head right now, but I'm curious. This is more psychology than the beyond belief kind of like religious stuff. But I'm still curious. What are the patterns that you notice in the difference between people of what we'll call daddy wounds versus mommy wounds, right? You're describing something that's very like, tell me what to do is very daddy thing. That's how you're describing it. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you've noticed patterns around that broadly.
Yes, I think that's for a conversation for another time, but I think the attachment, the powerful attachment issues that so many people have in adult life, whether it's avoidant attachment or anxious attachment, is really the mommy issues. And the wish to find somebody that you can fuse with and everything's going to be okay. As opposed to, tell me what to do, I'm a soldier, everything. I'm marching forward into adulthood, I'm terrified, tell me what to do so I'll be okay. That's the daddy thing. And I think religion really, really nails that. And then exploits it. And then can exploit it. If the guys running, and the guys and the women running the religions have to work on themselves hard so they will enable people to really grow and be close to God and not just be conduits and be egotistically satisfied at the expense of the people that they're studying with. It's just very seductive, think about it. Like I'm a psychiatrist. It's funny. When people come, I'm a child psychiatrist and adult psychiatrist. I work with a 9-year-old, okay? And any 9-year-old working with me will tell you, the first thing I say to them is this: I will never talk down to you. I respect you. You're here for a reason. I'm going to work with you to help you solve it. I'm not going to change my language for you. If I say a word you don't know, just ask me. I really have respect. I say that to 9-year-olds. I say that to 65-year-olds. People want to hear that. They don't. Yes, there's something valuable. Dr. Banschick, the Georgetown, New York Presbyterian, all that fancy stuff. Really? They want to know I know what I'm doing, but down deep, they want to know that I'm there with them. And I don't think I'm better than them. And I think as a therapist, and I would want this as a religious leader, as a therapist, when they know that I don't think I'm better than them, it's an elevation for them. It's not asymmetrical. It's like I believe in them the way I'm encouraging them to believe in themselves. Not to gain my strength through proxy, but to find in themselves like two guys on a journey, two people on a journey. I'm just on the road with you. I'm pointing out some rocks along the way that you don't need to step on anymore. And you don't need me at some point. That's the challenge for the religious leader. Can the religious leader at some point say, he's almost his own rabbi? It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I hear that. It's interesting because you do talk about enmeshment and emancipation, and that does touch upon that mother side, if you will, of what we just alluded to here. So I'm curious how that fits in to this. There's this desire, if I'm understanding correctly, to become just part of a larger whole,
yes.
Right? This movement that is bigger than me.
Yes. Okay. So I think that if you broadly talk about daddy and mommy issues, broadly, the father is more about identifying with agency moving forward into the world, a sense of fortitude and certainty, a sense of resilience in the face of frustration, a sense of being able to tolerate dysregulation and not turning it into a big catastrophe. I think of Clint Eastwood, make my day. There's a value of being a man in the world. We're going to be okay. Let's just go forward. And then there's the maternal. I trained at Georgetown University Hospital. And the family therapy center there was founded by a guy named Murray Bowen, who I never met, but he is the founder of systems theory in psychiatry. And he was a cantankerous Middle Western psychoanalyst who threw it all away and just studied systems. So when a patient came to him, he wasn't interested in the patient. He was interested in how the patient fit into the entire system. Is that cool?
It's cool, but it lacks something, I would say.
It does, but it's very interesting. So he'd call patients the identified patient, and he'd be interested in what their relationship was with their family and what that person's relationship was with their grandparents. He had a concept that I just loved called the undifferentiated ego mass, which has never made it in psychiatry, but I think it's a winner. You're smiling. It's great. Why are you smiling?
It sounds like a great insult. I think referring to someone as an undifferentiated ego mass has a bit of a science fiction element to it that I think
Okay,
could go really
but
far.
it's the family is an undifferentiated ego mass. Like people don't know where they're starting and stopping. People don't know, like mommy's angry and everybody's upset, right? Daddy's coming home. Is he going to be? Everyone's kind of tuned into each other so much that no one's really an individual. And that's, I think, the maternal. I think the need to differentiate from the mom that you're close with. That, we're first fused with our mother when we're little. I mean, this is the theory of child development, or one of the theories of child. Like early on, we have very powerful symbiotic bonds with our mothers, or our primary caretakers, but mostly it's mother. And slowly over time, we differentiate. Like, what's the third word that most children know?
No.
You're good. How do you know that?
I mean, it just feels intuitive, or like, I did study child development.
Okay, so no is a fantastic word. It's a delicious word, because that's the toddler saying, I am not you.
Right.
Okay? And we'll get to religious systems in a second, but let's think about the analogy I'm about to give you, and then talk about the religious world. A toddler is sitting on a high chair. You never thought you'd be talking about this today. A toddler, but the mothers in your audience will love this. A toddler is sitting on a high chair, and you give them something to eat, something messy that they're eating. Okay? And they pick it up, and what do?
They throw
it on the floor. And what does the mother say?
We don't throw it on the floor.
No, she goes, so the mother puts it on. Joey, you shouldn't do that. Puts it back. And what does the child do?
Throws it again. Yeah, but yeah.
Again and again and again. It's a game. And it's a game by which the child is setting a boundary where just because you want me to do something doesn't mean I'll do it. And that is part of being a healthy person. That I am not you. I am me. And I'm going to do what I want. And ultimately, they turn around and they want to do things that you want them to do from their place, not because you make them. In the undifferentiated ego mass, people are doing things because they're scared that everyone's going to criticize them, or they're in trouble, or they're going to feel desperate if they're not to do what their mom wants. In a healthy family, if your mother wants you to do something, you have dignity, you love her, you know it's the right thing, even if it's annoying, and you do it. Now, how does that translate to cults? In cults are undifferentiated ego masses. It's like it's hard.
It's one big blob of parent and child.
Right. There's no individuation and differentiation really allowed. Now, if you know that if you are developing as a person and you're able to disagree with your leader, and you're able to really say, I don't think this leader is good for me anymore, let me go to another leader. If you are able to actually differentiate and move, like move baseball teams, you're able to move around on your own autonomy, you're probably not part of a cult. You're probably part of an interesting organization that allowed you to become you, and you're finding your own way. But if you're going to be rejected or shamed or worse, beaten or cut off from your children or something terrible because you have decided you don't agree with the leader, I think that's where we end up with these undifferentiated systems that are top-down, narcissistic by nature, and very dangerous.
Yeah. I'm reflecting on this, and again, it's interesting that this is the emergent theme, but I'm reflecting on the fact that, so many cult leaders are men, typically, but oftentimes, at least from the patterns that I've seen, there's oftentimes like a second-in-command woman who really enables a lot of the bidding. She helps create that illusion of maternal aspects,
family, yeah.
Right? But she's still answering to the leader, first of all. That's the first part that's a problem here. And then she's playing a very specific role in making this more enticing. I think of many different specific individuals are coming to my mind.
So anyway, in terms of like, if you're involved with a narcissistic husband or wife or parent, not everybody has NPD. Not everybody has narcissistic personality disorder. Some people just have, predominant traits, and they may be jerks, but they're not terrible people. It's like there's a range here. Your job is to get a good therapist and differentiate. Like, how did I become vulnerable to be with this controlling person who's gaslighting me and triangling me stonewalling me, and all the things that narcissists do, and cutting me off. How did I end up here? Good question. Probably family of origin. Probably family of origin. Right? Now that we understand it. And then once you do that work, you go, okay, it's family of origin. Then you say to yourself, I'm really angry with this person. And then I would say, don't be angry with this person. The thing you need to be angry with is the enmeshment. The problem is the enmeshment. The problem is the narcissist. The problem is your enmeshment, your dependency on the narcissist is really much more of a problem than the narcissist themselves. Once you work on your dependency, they're just people saying what they say. Then you have limits. Then you have boundaries. Then you're the kid who can say, no, I'm sorry. I'm not diminished because I don't agree with you. God doesn't love me less because your version of God doesn't work with me. It's my Torah too. Thank you very much. Well, it's just your Torah. I'm using a Jewish, and
For sure, yeah. A lot of listeners are from that background. So you're
the same thing would be a Christian in any other faith. It's my God too. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So it's actually the ties that bind. It's that unhealthy connection between this entity, whatever that entity is, that is much more dangerous than the actual random person who might.
Well, I think what you're really understanding, and I thank you for understanding this, is that religion can get hijacked, just like woke, ideology can be hijacked, just like communism can be hijacked, just like anything can be hijacked, to serve, a kind of asymmetrical small group who runs the show at everybody else's expense. And if we use religious language, if only you're with us, you'll be saved. Or we're so much, they're so non-woke, or they're so, they're lost, or we're the real Jews and they're not the real Jews, or we're the real Christians and they're not the. Once you're in that place, you're moving away from spirituality and you're moving more towards a kind of toxic club. And sometimes that club could be as toxic as the worst kind of organizations like Jonestown that in history, and sometimes it could be toxicity just like being part of a golf and tennis club where you're new and nobody really cares about you, and it's all the same.
There's a range of toxicity, right? And some of them end up with a Netflix special, and some of them don't.
I think you're right. But to feel diminished in a system is to be aware that you're not differentiated enough, because nobody has the right to diminish it.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's very easy because they'll prey on a feeling of diminishment that you're already walking through the world with. And they point it and they say, that thing that you're already feeling, let me diagnose it for you. It's because you're missing God, right? So they're not even walking up to you and telling you that you're worth less. They're just calling out what's already there.
Right. And if you challenge them, they might say, well, that's the evil inclination. You see, it's very
Exactly.
And have they really worked on themselves to see if they're doing that to control you or they really mean it? This would take years of looking at themselves to really analyze. But there's no looking at themselves. They just want to win. See, that's the thing. You want to talk about what I learned in my life? I just learned that it's a lot of hapless people, taking religious ideas and kind of hijacking them for themselves. Not terribly, they're not evil, but I don't see a lot of thinking going on. I just see people having a structure that works, and then they execute on it. Yetzirah, religious longing, move to Israel. Like everybody's got their thing. But you know what? We're all holy souls. We're lucky to be here. Hashem loves each one of us. If there is Hashem, he loves each of us. Nobody's better than anybody else. This business about narcissism is ridiculous. That one person is more special than another person. For what? What are we doing? That's not very special at all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Helping a person find their way in this life that gives them autonomy and spirit, lets them be close to God, but not to be dependent on you, I think that's a wonderful goal.
Yeah. Amen. I want to have, if you could clarify one more concept for me that I've heard you mention, and then I'd love to analyze that. There's a poem you wrote that I would love to take a look at. But you spoke about sufferer and sufferee, and they both have the word suffering in them. So how do you understand them? How do you apply this to what we've been talking about?
In my book on narcissism, I believe that the narcissist and the person entangled with the narcissist are two sides of the same coin. They both need and fuel each other. Where would the narcissist be without people to control? They need the asymmetry. They need it desperately. They need to be more special than everybody else. So how do you become more special than anybody else if you don't have anybody else to be more special than, right? And the sufferer, the sufferer, the sufferee, that's the sufferer. The sufferee is the person who's entangled with the narcissist, who's so enmeshed that they're desperate to keep the narcissist at bay. The narcissist walks in the room and they're scared that they're going to be angry. They're worried that they're going to do something wrong. They're worried they're going to get gaslit. And if they stand up, he does stonewall you or gaslight you. In other words, you say you can't talk to me that way, and he says to you, "You're so sensitive, you're ridiculous. I can't deal with you." Right? That's gaslighting. You have a legitimate critique, and then he attacks you. That's gaslighting. So those are the two categories: the sufferer and the sufferee. I do believe the narcissist suffers. I think
that's the main insight here, right? That it's like we often forget how much pain they're probably in that they need to act.
I think that narcissists have an emptiness, a desperate. Gabor Mate writes about the hungry ghosts in addictions. And by the way, narcissism and addictions go together very strongly because they both are hungry for nothing. They're desperate. They're desperate to be special or desperate for the drug or the experience. And I think the need to be special all the time, you walk in the room and you're the one that everybody has to turn to. It's a lot of pressure, Shalom. Why can't you feel lovable and good just who you are? And why can't you just let people grow, in some kind of brotherhood with them? Why do you need to be in charge of other people in order to just feel good enough? So yeah, I think narcissists do suffer, and what you're probably not aware of is that many narcissists fail. Many narcissists in midlife, the whole system begins to fall apart, and they have tremendous comorbidity and depression, anxiety, PTSD, and drug and alcohol. Many of them live secret lives to get caught in financial scams or sexual scams. You know that from the religious world.
I do, but this actually explains it in a way that I've never looked at. That arc. See? I'm learning stuff. Exactly. I never looked at it from such. Part of it is probably because I'm bought in at some level. I never cease. This is what's amazing. I never cease to be shocked by rabbis who get caught doing horrific things because part of me is still 6 years old and thinks that the rabbi is the be all end all. Like, how could it not be? And everybody is an exception, right? Each time it happens, it's an exception to the rule. And so that's my own system. That's
it's
kind of
trap. It's a big trap for him to be that special for everybody. What about his sexual impulses or his impulses to drink or drug, or just his impulses to be bad? Like he just doesn't want to comply. There's a piece of him that goes, I don't want to comply. And isn't it nice to have a secret life where you can kind of do what you want and nobody knows, and you feel some relief for a little bit?
Yeah. You get the best of both worlds, really.
I think there's a lot of secret lives going on.
Oh, that's the news is a good indication of that. Do you wanna pull up your poem?
I think it'd be kind of cool. I want you to know, I've always enjoyed you, and I really have enjoyed being part of your journey. And I think that you can help be a leader for all of us, also given your own journey. To just, there's no need to be angry with people that are narcissistic. It's our enmeshment. The problem is our enmeshment. And the problem is their entrapment with their own need to be special. They're trapped and we're trapped. It's like, do you know the story of the Narcissus?
Is a specific story?
The story about Ovid, the Roman poet.
Oh, a Narcissus that he would look at his reflection and he couldn't look away.
Yeah. So this poem is important. So Ovid is the poet who wrote about Narcissus. But it starts out as a poem about Echo. So Echo was a mountain nymph who crossed Hera, who was Zeus's wife. Everybody crossed Hera. Everybody got in trouble with Hera. And her curse was that she couldn't talk. She could only echo what other people said. There was a young man named Narcissus. Narcissus was so handsome that everybody wanted to be with him. Men and women, doesn't matter. Insects, I don't care. Everybody. and he was so selfish that he was cursed to have to go to a pond, look at his image, and fall in love with his image. Now, the thing that is so great about this poem is Echo fell in love with Narcissus, who fell in love with an image. Echo fell in love with nothing, with somebody who was in love with nothing.
It's the classic borderline narcissistic relationship.
Is that incredible? And you see the enmeshment. You see the enmeshment of Echo with Narcissus. She couldn't even express her own needs.
Right, just what other people have to say, and that is. Right.
And that's in the enmeshment. Is that unbelievable?
It's pretty great.
It's beyond great. I mean, I'm a psychiatrist. This mythology is like I can't believe he wrote this 2,000 years ago. And and when he's chasing nothing, you sense he's not even chasing himself. He's chasing an image. He's chasing an external image of himself that doesn't exist. And that's what the narcissist does. Their self-esteem is based on what other people think of them. So if they're left in a room alone by themselves, not so easy.
Exactly. It's a very vulnerable place to be entirely at the whims of others.
All right, so if you want to review the poem, I'm happy to do so. Let's agree that while I am talking about somebody I know, I'm not going to allude directly to that person because I have no need to call that person out. And honestly, I honor that person. Whatever he did or didn't do came from the best place he could do. But the critique I have is still a valuable critique.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see if we can bring this up. I'm going to select, I'm not seeing it here. Here it is. Okay, I don't know how to get it on, let's see. I think maybe you should bring it up.
I can, yeah. Remind me where
Rabbi
it is. Do you want to email
I just emailed it to you, Rabbi Chardonnay.
Okay.
And I can read it. I hope it's okay. I'll read it, and then we can go through some of the verses together, okay?
It's like a Talmudic study.
Yes, it is. Having fun. Ready? Here it is. Ready? 22 years old and hungry, visiting the Western Wall. Some guy named Baruch taps my shoulder. I'm ushered for a call. You're a huge, burly man, white beard bigger than Baltimore. With that warm, embracing laugh, I'm kind of open to what's in store. Been a searcher from the start since I just started to think. How precious this life is, how short. Meaning is here, just on the brink. Graduated college with good grades, opted for medical school in Tel Aviv. Parents pissed. Why not America? A searcher who needs to believe. Rabbi Chardonnay, wise and confident, warmly gestures me to sit. You know the world can end tomorrow. Might not be good, not one bit. You mean the love I got and gave, the good work and friendships too, will amount to a hill of beans if I don't drop it all and follow you? Smiling widely with pride so deep, a knowing certainty, a look sublime. Yes, young man, you've got it. Drop it all, join us. You still have the time. Let me get this right. Drop out of medical school, you say? Study at your yeshiva 10, 15, 20 hours a day? So many souls to learn about. Rish Lakish, Akiv, Rambam, the best. A profoundly more wonderful family. Just jump in, young man. We'll show you the rest. You've known me for 10 minutes, and my soul is in danger? Are you going to support me? I say to myself about this stranger. I grew up in the rag business, the biggest clothing store in Queens. Dad, the master salesman, knew how to close suits and jeans. Rabbi Chardonnay was smooth, another father mentor so kind, but also a closer of closers, with God surely on his side. Sincere you saw past me, to greatness you were bound, an institute to establish, souls to save, to be found. Decades later, I asked the question, this teacher so long deceased. Your soul should have a rising, so much good, so much release. Commitment to orthodoxy is huge and comes not for free. As an adult now, I wonder, were you really talking to me? Who sat behind you, my friend? Your father, mother, family esteemed. What shadows did you bring forward? So many innocents to clean. Having been in the religious world, these questions seem not awake. What we bring to the table, love and hurt, that's often what's at stake. Rabbi Chardonnay, I remember it was a sweet, quiet day. A day like yesterday or tomorrow. Next door, a happy child at play. Who came before or after in awe by shame, hurt, or desire? Who by hope or by fear, embracing yet another fire? You had an answer for everything, a virtual crib sheet from up high. Not my root source, not even close, deep within, my soul did sigh. Who remembers an encounter 40 years after the event? Holy ambivalence, a life moment well spent. You had that big smile, that sensibility that moves so many to some eternity. Did you look inside? Did you like the view? Holy levels of pleasure? Give or take a few. You tried so very hard, I sense you were clear, to save the Jewish role, a teacher, a yearning, a flawed big teddy bear. We have a religion and a life, 2 tablets to be known. Rabbi Chardonnay, one of my teachers, a soul privileged to be shown. Moving up to 10,000 feet, I now identify with you. We bring everything to this life. Our shadows are like that too. Years later, we had a talk. You apologized profoundly, then asked for a donation. The shadow works ever so soundly. Now entering the final stretch with so many mentors in tow. Wonderful men, women, and colleagues, teachers I've been privileged to know. Rabbi Chardonnay, you're in the mix with sincerity and drive profound. I do wish you could have seen me better. Less drive, more presence, more ground. If memory serves, I see your head ablaze with so many thoughts. Whirlwinds of possibilities, so many dreams to be sought. A building to be built, a city to be reclaimed, a generation filled with optimism, a future yet to be named. But I was a small, singular self with a tiny, grand agenda. With your small, singular self, we could have met, I betcha.
Thank you. I asked you to share your story in the beginning, and you shared your story at the end. So,
What is your take on the poem?
I read it before. I remember. I didn't remember you going into such detail about specific. It's right there, right beneath the surface, right? And I think it really speaks to everything we've been talking about today, right? About being able to see another person, right? Is this about the other person, or is this about you? And that's what it comes down to. And if it's about the other person, there needs to be a lot more flexibility as to what the final suggestions are. And the outcomes are as diverse as the people in the world. If you have one solution for everybody, that's because it's just one of you. And you're that one that everybody needs to conform to. There was just one way to do it. So I always find your story quite telling, as you know. I think to me one of the most striking bits, I think this really says it, that to apologize and then to completely miss the point in almost the same sentence, that really summarizes like a profound inability to see the other person.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes there's a struggle, right, where you really do see the area where you're messing up, like where you've fallen short, but your instincts are too basic and too strong that you can't move past them just, by one moment of rebuke, right? There's a lifetime of personal growth that maybe was missed, and you can't just make up for that in 1 second just by being called out once.
And when I invite him to, who's behind you when you talk to me? What mother, what child, who's really talking to me? Rabbi Chardonnay. And are you talking to me? Are you talking to me or something Or you're looking past me to something else. Can we just meet, really meet, like Buber talks about in I, That? Can we really meet? Where it's not you being the big burly rabbi, but like, look, I'm Dr. Banschick. I'm a big man myself. But I tell the 9-year-old, I'm not better than you. We're in this together. He could have done that with me. And it would have been redemptive for him too.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember for years, I mean, this has been a very conscious like voice in my head, but like how much my own parents' voices continued to resonate, right? So much of what I was doing on the day was this sort of very subconscious, like if I do this, they will like me. If I do this, I will earn their approval, right? And I could hear specific sentences that they uttered at specific times. And that's one option. The other is an amalgamation of the entire sense of how you should be that kind of lives within. But regardless, in both cases, it was, if you don't deliberately work past that, you will spend your entire life doing the things that will make your parents happy, even when they're dead.
Because the enmeshment continues. You see the problem.
Lives
the
on.
problem.
It lives
This
on.
is what I'm contributing in my book, and you can see the love I have for Rabbi Chardonnay. It's not like I'm coming from. I don't need to have asymmetry of Rabbi Chardonnay. I don't. Like, he was a flawed man who really was trying, and he missed with me, and he probably missed with a lot of people. And he probably had some narcissism that he needed to be so culturally narcissistic. He needed his mission was so important that he lost the preciousness of the people in front of him in the mission. And once that starts to happen, we're moving in the direction of a cult and away from the direction of religion that's really about redemption for each of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm curious if you have any final thoughts, and a prompt in general would be around advice for somebody who's on a healing journey. And to me, there's almost like three categories. There's somebody who is trying to avoid any of this, somebody who is trying to extricate from this, or maybe a little bit later trying to heal from it. So any general words of advice, any specific books or resources where people could learn more about these topics?
Well, there's a very nice book on narcissistic enmeshment. I don't remember the name of the author, but it's called It's Not You. And it's a nice, accessible book. And there's another book on toxic cults by Dykman. I don't remember. I didn't come prepared with the names of these people.
Totally fine.
These are both good books. But I think It's Not You is a very good primer on what it's like to be entangled with a narcissist and how we come from enmeshed families. And certainly what happens is that we end up in a certain arrested development as either a kind of a fixer or a golden child, or we live secretly just so that we don't get in trouble, or like you become the truth teller. And everybody has their roles in order to survive, but it's not really you. So you turn into a 50-year-old person and you're a golden child and you're tired of it. Or you're 45 years old and you're living and you're kind of like letting people pay. You're kind of invisible to everybody else, and you go, this is not right. Or you're trying to fix everybody, like you're fixing everybody in your family, because these are roles that happened to you when you were little. And so now you're in those roles with a narcissist, and you go, this comes from someplace. You get a good therapist. You give it the time it needs. Obviously, if you're unsafe, you must make yourself safe, first and foremost, because sometimes narcissistic systems can be dangerous. Narcissists dysregulate, and they can be dangerous sometimes. But most of the time, they're just awful. A bad experience where you're diminished and anxious all the time. Get a good therapist. Read the book, It's Not You. When my book comes out, read that. And I think, and see the love I have for the narcissist. In other words, they are people too. Like they're just human beings. And you're not doing them any favor by giving them all this power. They have to feel the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune also. Sorry. Not on your back, on their back. I think that's sufficient for me.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Banschick, for your insights. We look forward to your book when it comes out.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond Belief. If you found the episode inspiring, please share it with others who might benefit from it, and be sure to subscribe to it to get updates about future episodes.